coming up on 12:18 here on TSN 690. It is Game Points with Matthew Ross, and we welcome into the program from the West Coast and mayorsmanor.com. You can follow him on twitter.com/MayorNHL. It is John Hoven. Hey, John, how you doing?
That music can only mean one thing.
Yes, and that would be you on this program, and no wrestler actually competing with that music as his intro music.
Well, once CM Punk found out that I was going to be stealing his music, he just decided to take his ball and go home. So no more Monday Night Raw for Mr. Chicago.
And that means no more Monday Night Raw for me, period. So it's kind of...
I have to agree with you on that. He was the last of the things worth watching. So, yes, nothing left there. Move along.
Kind of sad. All right, let's talk about some fun stuff here. Has it been a fun time for you last, 12 hours or so as we get closer to this deadline? People like you must be licking their chops at all the fodder and material to write about and report about.
Actually, it hasn't been a lot of fun, to be quite honest with you. It gets to be a little bit monotonous at times with people and their crazy trade ideas, and I don't know if it's the advent of video games and PlayStation and NHL 2013 and all that stuff, or if it's fantasy hockey or what it is, but everybody thinks they're a general manager and they don't take into consideration, logic, salary cap, position, things like that. So it ends up being a really crazy time, and out of respect for the readers that click on the website and that follow you on Twitter, you want to respond to all of them and connect with them like you do throughout the other 360 plus days of the year. But it does get to be a little bit crazy at this particular time of year because people just flip their lid and they want to trade for the sake of making a trade, and that's not always, of course, what's in the best interest of anybody's hockey club.
All right, let me ask you about a player that's intriguing me, and some have said that doesn't always have that work ethic, but at the end of the day, he's got 2 Stanley Cup rings. Washington Capitals acquired Dustin Penner for a 4th-round pick today, a guy who had 26 points on the year, but just incredible amount of size. And gosh, I would have loved to seen him here in Montreal for the last 20 games of the year. Mm-hmm. Why did the Ducks get rid of him, and what are the Capitals getting?
Well, it is a little perplexing that the Ducks did get rid of him. Of course, if you break down the stats, he had a much better kind of start to the year versus what he maybe has been producing recently. But that doesn't mean a lot to me if I'm a coach or a general manager, because he's the type of player who is going to come up big in the playoffs, and he's the kind of guy who's going to create space for my other guys in the playoffs. And that's the one thing, Kings fans want to dog on the guy for not producing and putting up the goals like he did in Edmonton, but that's always the problem when you acquire, whether it's a pitcher in baseball that was the best pitcher on the worst team, or in this case, a guy who was putting up a lot of goals in Edmonton, and you bring him to a better team like LA, it's difficult for them to reproduce because they're not in the same environment anymore. And the one thing that Penner brought to LA, for as much grief as people want to give him, he created space and opportunity for his line mates. And that's one of the reasons why I believe guys like Mike Richards are having a down year this year, is that Penner's not there on the left wing. So the Kings didn't like the production that they were getting from Penner. That's why they let him go. I think Anaheim kind of got to that same point, but there's something else combined with that. They think that by clearing some salary cap space, they're going to be able to make a run at somebody, let's call it a bigger name, whether that's Vanek, not sure. I heard some stuff today about Ryan Kessler and the Ducks being interested in him. I find that deal personally very hard to make. I don't see how Vancouver could justify, either to themselves internally or to their fan base, trading him within the division that Vancouver has clearly already had enough trouble with this year in the likes of the Kings, the Sharks, the Ducks, and the Coyotes. I just can't see them making that trade. But, hey, a week ago we thought that the trade of Roberto Luongo to Florida was a dead idea. So, what do we know? In terms of, what the Capitals are getting, they're getting a guy that I just talked about. They're getting a guy who's going to create some space for some of his line mates. He's a great locker room guy. All of his teammates love him, and so that's something that perhaps can help unify, a room that perhaps is a little bit divided there in Washington.
John, you look at the goalie market. Of course, Ryan Miller gets dealt on Friday, but Gallup gets dealt recently along with Roberto Luongo yesterday. Do you believe a guy like Martin Brodeurs' value goes down, considering that all the top-tier goalies have been dealt in the last 24 to 48 hours? Yeah,
for sure. Somebody asked me earlier today, where do I think Brodeur is going to end up, and I said, hasn't he kind of been boxed out here? I mean, the option that seemed to kind of make the most sense for him, in my opinion, would have been going to Minnesota. Here's a situation where they really think that Darcy Kemper is a guy that can carry them, and they want to give him a lot of minutes to see if that's somebody that they can think about towards the future. They don't really need a number one goaltender at this point. of the stature of a Martin Brodeur or a Halak, that doesn't really help them much. So getting a guy like Brodeur was almost perfect in the sense that he's a good veteran guy. He can help mentor the kid. And if he plays a couple of spot games, that's great. If they have to rely on him, they would have confidence. He's kind of been boxed out here because, like you said, all these other moves that have gone on. So I'm not really sure, when you look at, call it 60 jobs around the league or 58 other jobs outside of New Jersey, I'm not really sure where he fits into the landscape of things that have, obviously changed so much here over the last 48 hours.
Chatting with John Hoven of mayorsmanor.com as we talk about us getting all now closer to this deadline. So do you like it when the trades are spread out? We had, Miller a couple days ago and a bunch of trades today, or do you like them all on the final day?
No, I do like it spread out. I think it gives, everybody in the hockey community time to kind of talk about things, let the trades breathe a little bit. We had some activity today. We had the Ryan Miller thing. It was great that we were able to talk about the Ryan Miller deal over the weekend and not let Steve Ott get lost in that trade, because I keep saying over and over, I think that really is just as important as the acquisition of Ryan Miller. He's a grit guy. He's one of those guys that almost every Stanley Cup winning team has, and that's a key add for them. And I think that if that deal would have happened on a day when 15 other trades or 25 other trades would have happened, it would have certainly been lost in the mix. So, no, I like it when it's spread out a little bit.
Canadiens fans got an up-close look at the Kings as they beat Montreal Monday night 2-1. Is it safe to say that LA is now rounding into playoff mode? They look pretty good.
Well, they are. They're rounding into playoff mode, but here's the thing. People have been asking recently, does their and this was already being asked after they had won 3 games. Now it's up to 5-game winning streak here. Does their play of late change things? No, their play of late doesn't change things, because the plan has been the plan since the Kings were eliminated in the playoffs last year by the Chicago Blackhawks. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier, that fans don't look at the bigger picture. The Kings believe, all the way up to GM Dean Lombardi, they believe that they would have beaten the Chicago Blackhawks in the third round of the playoffs last year had Willie Mitchell been healthy. You had a dinged-up Matt Green who missed most of the year with a back injury and recently just had come back, to playing. And you had Willie Mitchell who missed the entire year and was arguably their best defenseman. People forget that. Was arguably their best defenseman when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2012, and he wasn't playing last year. So they wanted to fix what was happening on defense. And I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but that's why they re-signed Robin Regehr. It looked like Mitchell's career was over. The writing was on the wall that Scuderi wasn't coming back. They had been offering him a contract for a couple of months, and he hadn't signed yet. And Lombardi was worried that he was going to go 0 for 3 if he didn't re-sign Regehr, who was scheduled to be a free agent in July. So they re-signed Regehr. But that's the plan. The plan is they know they need to get better defensively. So whether they've won 5 games in a row, whether they've outscored their opponents 15-1, it doesn't really matter. That was a made-up stat, by the way, so I don't need anybody tweeting me that those 15-1 stats are wrong. But the point is, Lombardi has been all in on defense for the last 6 weeks, and nothing has changed in the last 2 weeks or the last 48 hours. He is going in hard on a defenseman. He wants a hard-nosed defenseman. He needs somebody that can play a lot of minutes and allow a guy like Drew Doughty to create offensively without having to worry so much about the defensive responsibilities, which is what Doughty's been saddled with ever since Mitchell went down with his knee injury going all the way back to the 2012 playoffs.
I want to get your take before we let you go on the San Jose Sharks, the team I picked to win the Stanley Cup last year.
You keep bringing that up every time we talk. Are you trying to convince yourself or convince us that they're a Stanley Cup contender?
No, I said last year. I picked them last year.
You bring it up all the time, though.
I know. But my producer here about a few minutes ago said I was a year too early. So I'm trying to convince myself to pick them again this year. But
a year too early. Their starting goaltender can't stop anything right now, and so they're not going to do it with Niemi if they're going to do it this year. And now they're saying that they might just sit pat. I mean, that locker room is tight. They have a lot of.
They got Torres back. That's a big piece for them.
What's that?
They got Torres back. That's a good playoff piece for them.
Yeah, who?
Torres, Rafi Torres.
Who? Rafi Torres? That's the guy? Who?
Well, he rubs people the wrong way. That's a good quality in the playoffs.
All right, I'll take Steve Ott over Rafi Torres if you're looking for that type of a player, and that's an insult to Steve Ott to even compare those two guys. No, look, you're absolutely right.
Come on, Logan Couture has had rest, all right? To me, he's this generation's – he's got the ability to maybe be a Joe Sakic. I really think he's that good. And I think he still has his best hockey to play this year, and I think if he does rise up, they have a shot.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that that Logan Couture, his best days are in front of him. I would tend to agree with you there. I'm confused by what the Sharks are doing. I hear that they're in talks right now. I forget where I read it, so I apologize whoever posted this earlier today, but that they're interested in bringing back Devin Setoguchi. I mean, are you kidding me?
Right.
Devin Setoguchi?
Yeah.
This is a guy that, couldn't cut it with the Minnesota Wild. And they'll take anybody at forward. A guy standing on a street corner with the sign, "We'll play for food," is going to have an opportunity to play forward for the Minnesota Wild. I mean, the only team that probably needs more help at forward would be the Nashville Predators. So, come on. I don't understand what's going on in San Jose, because what they need is help on defense. All the help in the world, all the kudos in the world to a guy like Boyle and what he's been able to do. But we all know he's getting long in the tooth. And when it comes time for the playoffs, you're going to need some reinforcements. So it's not going to surprise me if the Sharks go out and get a defenseman. But if they hold pat and don't do anything, and they think that current roster is deep enough to get through the Western Conference and make it to the Stanley Cup final, I think they're mistaken. I don't think that they have quite enough to get it done.
He's fired up, and he's also available for reading at mayorsmanor.com, Mayor NHL on Twitter.com as well, and we'll post this segment tomorrow on our blog. John, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
No problem, boys. Talk to you soon.
All right, there you go. Game Points. We will be back with Gabriel Morency next.